context, on this religious context of the Bible, there have been several scholars notice something astonishing about divinity, about God, in the archaeologically discovered texts of El in the Canaanite pantheon, with his family. El and his wives, who get together and conceive and give birth to the gods, their sons and daughters. This is standard cultural context according to the biblical scholarship these days. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not. Several scholars have noticed something utterly astonishing about God the Father. It is breathtaking. If you don't understand the implications of this, nothing I say is going to shock you. Now, I've been told I ought to be embarrassed for teaching this. Why? Are you kidding? I'm not the one teaching this. I am using the biblical scholars themselves. They're the ones that have found these texts. They're the ones that translate these texts. They're the ones that analyze these texts. I am simply pointing them out to you. This has nothing to do with sexual perversion. It has nothing to do with my own inferiority sexual complex or whatever other stupid junk you can bring up. This has nothing to do with me. This is the cultural context of the Hebrew Bible. E. Theodore Mullen, Jr., The Divine Counsel in Canaanite and Early Hebrew Literature. This is from the Scholars Press. 1980 is the reprint. He was one of the students of Frank Moore Cross. He notes on page 17, the epithets of El, indeed our Creator is eternal, indeed ageless is He who formed us. These epithets are regarded in Canaanite mythology as the Father of the gods and Creator of heaven and earth. This is how El is portrayed. This is the El of the Hebrew Bible. We are talking about the same God. Make no mistake about that. It's not a pagan God and the true God in the Bible and a pagan God in the other nations. Not at all. Mark S. Smith has shown that powerfully. The birth of the gracious gods shows El fathering the gods dawn and dusk by his two young wives. El's major consort, Atarat Elat, shares his role as creator. She is called the progenitress of the gods. As El's mate, she is considered to be the mother of the gods. This is the context of the Hebrew Bible, people. Were you aware of that? Pretty amazing, isn't it? Further, on page 71, he's translating a text. Ooh, horseflies. He's translating a text that says, surely the love of King El moves you, the affection of the bull arouses you. He is talking to his wives. And Mullen Jr. notes, on page 71, note 113, the word yod is slightly ambiguous. The amorous connotations are clear from its parallelism with the word love and affection. While possibly related to the root yadad, compare the Hebrew yadid, and having a meaning synonymous with love, it is more likely that it refers to El's penis. This is the obvious meaning of yadu in several of the Ugaritic texts, where El seduces his two young wives. That is as blunt and straight out as I have ever seen it discussed by this biblical scholar. This isn't a Mormon scholar. This has been completely peer-reviewed. This is his PhD dissertation out of Harvard. On page 107, El seduces the two wives. Lo, the two wives cry, O husband, husband, stretched is your bowstave, drawn is your mighty shaft. The references to El's sexual ability and the size of his member are transparent. The exact ritual indicated by the text is not known, but there's no doubt that it is a fertility rite. The text records a number of various actions by El, all to ensure his own fertility. El embraces his two wives, and they conceive and bear the gods dawn and dusk. Whether the ritual was to help El become potent or to ensure the fertility of the union is irrelevant to the problem of El's sexual ability. He clearly seduces and impregnates the two goddesses. This is the basis of the biblical God El and Elohim in the Old Testament. Now, furthermore, and then this is Frank Moore Cross, Canaanite Myth and Hebrew Epic. He's translating the same text on page 22 and 23. Let me read this to you. The chief text falling into the pattern of the Hyros Gamos. This is the sacred marriage of El and his two wives and the birth of his sons Dawn and Dusk. It says, El's power is great like seas. El's power is like that of floods. Long is El's member like seas. El's members like that of flood. And he says, Frank Moore Cross on page 53, says, the word Yod means El's penis is long. That is how he understands the text to read also. Classic text, Canaanite Myth and Hebrew Epic. Another text that I have from a scholar is Mark S. Smith, Untold Stories, the Bible and Ugaritic Studies in the 20th Century by Hendricks Publishers, 2000. Just brand new, basically. On page 217, he translates the same text and says the word Yod can be hand or it can mean penis. It has the connotation of love. The whole point of comparing this in the ritual is so wordplay is involved, of course, for love, making love, producing children. The Ugaritic texts present concrete actions, not abstractions. This is not philosophical or spiritual. This is how the gods procreate. This is the biblical God, people. Later on, his son Yahweh took over his role of El, but Yahweh had a consort, Asherah, and they too are said to have produced children. Anyway, the original semantics of love and hand have merged, and the king is excited. The king El is excited to try to seduce his young wives. That's in Untold Stories. In his other text, The Origins of Biblical Monotheism, Israel's Polytheistic Background in the Ugaritic Texts, page 84, he is talking about the idea of the divine hand, and this idea of El's supersize with his sex is to ensure that he has the power, the capability, and ability of producing his family. I'll put it euphemistically, okay? I've been blunt before, and people are too shocked by it. El makes love to his wife, okay? You understand what that involves. He is nowhere described as an immaterial spirit. The El of the Bible, the cultural context of the Bible El, is not an ephemeral spirit filling the immensity of space. It is a man with a gray beard who is very wise because he has presided over the council of the gods. And that council of the gods, according to Mark Smith, is the divine family. El, his wives, his sons, and his daughters. In one of the texts, it talks about, I believe it's in Frank Moore Cross, he talks about El making love to one of his wives so they can produce spirit children. And El makes love with another one of his wives so that he can create mortal children for the earth. Now, if that doesn't take your breath away, nothing I say will. That is astonishing. Who else teaches that? This is the context. So far as I know, this idea of God, the eternal family, being married, producing offspring, children, and the human marriage is represented in heaven. It's reflected back and forth on earth as it is in heaven. So far as I know, there is only one religion that teaches that. It starts with an M. It ends with an M. It's called Mormonism. None of this refutes Mormonism. But this is the proper biblical, cultural context.